So Tara, why don't you go ahead and start out with saying a little bit about yourself, and then what you're going to solve, what problem you're going to solve here for our folks here today.
Okay, cool. So I'm Tara Walker. I am the artist formerly known as a developer evangelist, because they call us tech evangelists now. Yep. And whatever they decide to call us probably in 2 years. You know, we like to change names. I am a certified geek girl. I've been working for Microsoft probably about 11 years. And I get to deal with cool people like Russ and watch John Papa and them do their thing. So I just kind of stay in the shadows and watch the real geeks do their thing. Today I'm going to just talk about Monogame. And Monogame is really cool because we got really beat up that XNA wasn't in the, you know, the new Windows 8 platform. I mean, like, if I got tweeted one more time about XNA, I probably would have been doing some traveling to, you know, kind of swing on some people. Yes, even me. So I really kind of have been dealing with Xamarin for quite a while, and Mono as it used to be called. And the guys over there decided, hey, we really want XNA to stay, and picked it up as a collaborative open source object. Them and some collaboration with Sick Head Games and other things. So the great thing about Monogame is if you like C#, if you don't want to write the C++ and DirectX, but please believe that is the most performant. But if you really are digging like the C#, the XNA old world, you can now do Monogame and be native cross-platform against all the platforms. That's Windows 8, Windows Phone, iOS, and Android.
Did you get that? All the platforms.
Native.
You know. I actually saw Bill Reese present this last week over at the Code on the Beach, Jacksonville. By the way, when that comes around, next time, go. It's a great conference. Anybody in the live audience or, you know, anybody's watching this video, I tell you, great, great stuff. So, and I was floored, and I was very ecstatic that you're presenting on the same topic. So why don't you go ahead and get everybody jazzed up on this, because it's great stuff.
Oh, cool. All right, so I'll just start quickly out with just kind of what it is. So it is open source implementation of XNA 4.0. And what I want you to key in on, and you see I have it in all caps, this is putting apps, games in the market natively across the platform. This is not interpreted in HTML, anything else. This is not in a browser. This is running native, taking advantage of the actual device you have. And that's whether that's iOS, macOS, PlayStation, Xbox. I could go on. I mean, they even now are supporting Raspberry Pi. Haha. So truly, this is something that's really cool that I can truly write once, which is their theme, write once and play everywhere. So very cool. Pretty quickly, it's built upon .NET and XNA 4.0, so you're going to get that plumbing in there. What you're also going to get, if you're at all familiar with the Xamarin tools, is it's built upon MonoTouch and MonoDroid and Mono, which allows you then to run these games on Linux, Raspberry Pi, iOS, et cetera, right. And then it's using the C# language compiler, and what they've done is actually altered it so that it compiles as appropriate for the operating system you're on. So as you know, iOS is not a just-in-time compiler type of platform, right? You have to have everything compiled. Well, this will do it for you, and then just put the executable on the actual device. So you don't even have to worry about the fact that it's not an interpreted, you know, kind of system like our .NET or like a Java type platform. Only other things to notice, it is integrated into the developer environments of both Visual Studio and MonoDevelop. And what's cool about this for me is I live in Visual Studio, right? That is my tool of choice. But I can now write for a game, and even an app actually, for iOS or Android right here in my good old-fashioned Windows 8 machine. Only caveat being with iOS, I just have either I can do Mac in the cloud or take my Mac out, and then, you know, have that broadcast my IP address, and then still in Visual Studio Windows 8 build it. So really cool. All right, so we're gonna get into the code. I just wanted to give you one last thing to note. Getting started, there is a binary installer, monogame.net. Go in there and you can get the latest stable release. But if you are risky like I am, like I've been playing, which is why some of my games have not been working, but you can always get the latest cut of the build. They have a build server. So if you want to stay on the bleeding edge of some of the things they're adding to this, you absolutely can go and click the build server and get the latest ones. Your mileage may vary.
Right.
Yep, there you go.
Now, there are other, you know, gaming solutions for building apps. But my understanding is that with Monogame, you've got complete control of it, basically. You can really put, you know, detailed, you know, event handlers in and the code that goes behind those. So you're not going to get stuck short, right, on anything. I mean, this is really the best environment for having that kind of control from a developer standpoint.
And what's cool is if you think about some of the more popular games that are in the marketplaces right now, so like Draw Stickman, Armed, Bastion, all of those were written with Monogame to get on all those platforms. So this is not something that's just really a toy. This is a tried and true kind of platform. Yes, it's open source, and that's what's cool, because you can literally go to GitHub and even add things that you really need to see on that platform. So you see a lot of people wanting some different performance in iOS. Well, guess what? They go in and say, hey, I really need X, Y, and Z to happen. And magically, someone goes and work on it, and it's there. And so it's a real cool thing. And because it's supported by 2 major game houses, it's here to stay. So I've been really enjoying it. I actually have a tutorial on my blog. I'm up to part 6 that'll get you into the game. What I did was take a couple of games that we have on the XNA Creator Hub, and let's convert those and see how easy it was and write a tutorial about it. So I'll show you one of them now.
All right, who wants to see some code? Anybody here?
Good.
All right, going to code here.
All right, so what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna run the game so you can kind of see. But what I'm gonna bump this up just a little bit. What I want you to really look at this is nothing but good old-fashioned C#. What you're looking at right now. If you've ever done anything with XNA, you've obviously gamed graphics device manager, sprite match. I'm not doing anything that would deem to say, hey, I'm either on a Mac or iOS. And I'll show you I'll put a few statements on there. Hey, if you're in a iOS, I'll show my other game that I'm working on that, hey, runs some specific things. But pretty much other than putting in some if-defs, I'm good to go with the code I have. So let's run this really quickly. And it's thinking, and it's thinking, and it's thinking. There you go. So this is the one I'm working on, and it was just, I was like, this is the shooter game. And you can't hear it because, you can kind of hear it, even though. So this is using just the graphics, and this was just just kind of the shooter game thing. And I was like, how much of this code do I have to change and reuse, right? So let's look at that really quickly. It's keeping score, I'm doing menus. I also started to say, okay, how much can I really evolve this beyond that? So what I decided to do was, there's a game called Honeycomb Rush. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it uses a great sample out of the MSDN libraries of game state management. Obviously that's a big thing, making sure you have a game state. Well, literally I just took their sample with the normal plumbing of the game state and recreated Honeycomb Rush. So let's kind of talk about how you do that. There's one caveat with this, but it's not a bad one, because again, I have Visual Studio, so I'm in perfect space for this. They have not implemented a content pipeline as of yet, right? It is in the works, it's in beta. So if you want to use it, absolutely go to the site, download it again, Bleeding Edge, you're fine. But what you can do to get past that, if you don't want to use their build server that they're working on right now, you have a wonderful thing because you have Visual Studio. And I'm going to show you really quickly how you can quickly build a content pipeline, even though it's not in there.
What exactly is a content pipeline?
Great question. Glad you asked that. Okay. So if you are building games, you have sprites, the graphics that are going there, textures, you have audio. So you hopefully heard the audio that was going on in there. And what you want, those are the plumbing of your game. It's the content of your game, hence content pipeline, right? So it is really the plumbing on it. And so what you need to do to make it efficient in a game as your screen is refreshing and it's showing your interaction is, it needs to be compiled in a binary format. And that's pretty much what the content pipeline does for you. And it needs to be compiled in the appropriate format for what you're doing and rendering in your game so it renders effectively. So for instance, if I want to take a WAV file and I need to render it in a certain way, I need it to compile in such a way that, again, it's efficient for the 60 megahertz that you get to refresh, not that much, but you get to get that refresh. You want it to do an optimization of it, right? That's where the binary comes in. And so what the content pipeline does, it does that for you. And as you know, if you did anything in XNA before, we can make things so easy for you, right? You struck up a Windows Phone library, you stuck some files in there, it was PNG or JPEG, and it did it for you, you didn't care. Well, this is not like that, but remember, we made it easy for you. So why not take the easy way out? I'm all about easy. So what this did was simply, if you want, and I actually keep a folder open that's usually called a content pipeline. So I'm gonna just open up one here and I'll just show you how easy this is. So I'm in Visual Studio. If my mouse will stop jumping, there. I'm in Visual Studio, and when you start up a Monogame, as you notice, I have all of these options, from Windows, from Xbox to Android and everything else. But what I want to do is I just want to do a content pipeline, right? So why don't I just do something simple that like I used to do? Why don't I just go into XNA Game Studio and start up a game? Now, yeah, I'm not gonna really use this, but what I usually do, and I actually have a set one that I do right now, is I just have this project that's an empty project that I typically just use for content. So obviously what it does is, hey, there you are, it built my typical, content game. So Russ, let's see if you actually paid attention to Bill. Yeah, when you're doing content, do you remember in the old XNA days, where would you put your little cute pictures and everything? You remember?
In the content pipeline.
Yeah, where would you do that, Russ? And where would you do that, Russ? Yeah. Yeah, okay, no worries.
Help me.
I'm gonna show you.
Right.
So you're gonna take some pictures. Let's see if I can find a few. All right, so here's some graphics.
Is that your external voice or your internal?
You're right, I'm like, did I mean to say that? I'm sorry, Twitter APIs are not very nice to me. Is that a better way to say it? There you go. Okay. All right, so here we go. I have some fonts, I have some sounds and textures. I'm obviously gonna use the lazy way out and just kind of take one of these and just pretty much drag them into this content pipeline, right? And then I'm gonna take these textures. I'm totally doing the lazy way. You can do one by one, but I'm being lazy. All right, so I have these fonts in here, these Sprite fonts, custom ones. I have sounds, I have textures. And as you know, when you did this in the content pipeline, you could go in here in the properties and say, I want this to be compiled a certain way. That's no different than what you would do now. So here, the great thing about Visual Studio, it kind of detected that for you. It said, okay, yeah, this is a Sprite font. I kind of want you to know what you want to do. When Monogame comes out with theirs, they'll have some additional ones that are for iOS and Android that you can select. But again, I'm just going to let it do its thing, right? So all I'm going to do here, one, I just need to make sure all these things stay compiled. And again, because I'm using some of the older stuff as far as the Game Studio, all of them pretty much already stay compiled to Bill. So I'm good, right? The only other thing you might want to do, maybe so, is there's a thing that says do not copy. If you want to have copies in different places, just in case your bin gets corrupted, sometimes I do this, I guess being overly cautious. I'll sometimes go in and say copy always. And that just spits it out to your output bin, but it's going to put it in your content library anyway. There's a lot of physics that can go into this. So you really kind of need to figure out if that's kind of what your goal is.
Yeah, even automatically you're like resizing your screen. So if you have an X coordinate and Y coordinate width, then you just apply the dimensions, right? Now you got your ratio and you can come up with the height, So things like that are pretty neat.
Yeah. So once you compile and everything else, all it does is create these XMB files. And I'm going to just, while that's compiling, I'll just show you what they look like in my game. So if you look here, after doing that, all it does is spit these XMB files out in your game. And these XMB files are just the binary format of what you have. And that's what actually is getting rendered in this game I built. So literally just hitting build, dragging those things over, hitting build, you're done. And I literally just go into my output folder that it's going to put in that bin and drag these into my game. The only thing about Monogame is you need to just make sure you drag it into a folder that has content. And the new templates that they built already have a content for you Before you had to build one, but it's really simple to say add folder. I think everybody's okay with doing that. After that, pretty much you're done with the content pipeline. It's done everything you need to do. So yeah, there's some harder ways, right? But I'm lazy. So it's easier just to go ahead and get these things compiled and then get to the real good stuff. I'm going to show you one more thing here. I'll go back out to the browser and show you the site in a minute. But when you start this up, there are different ways you can do it on Windows 8. And this is the last thing I'll pretty much call out so you'll know. If you're in the WinRT world, obviously we render first in a XAML page. So you might want to use some features between XAML and XNA as it used to be able to do it on the phone. So there is a template in there that allows you to do this. But if you want to just, and I'll bring up the code for this last one, if you want to just do it purely where it's completely cross-platform, you don't have to do that. But if you want to use some of the XAML features, then you can actually start up a Monogame with XML. XAML, I said XML, oh gosh. All right, so let's start this last one, let's see. All right, this is the last one I'll bring up. This game, Honeycomb Rush, that I don't want to log into Team Foundation server that I'm working on, is actually a cross-platform game. And so I'm gonna show you how easy it is to have this code be the same. So this is Honeycomb Rush. It is the game state management game I was talking about. And the first thing when the game started up, and this is a little bit different than if you're doing it for the XAML world, if you're doing it cross-platform, is, let me slow some of this down so you guys can see. All right, so right now this game is specifically for the Windows Store. But if you look at the code, I'll just start up my Honeycomb Rush. I changed it from game 1 that you typically get. You'll see all I have is some if-defs in there. If, that's it. And based upon what targeted framework Visual Studio is in, what I've declared in my build, that's what it will compile and render. So right now I'm not in Windows Phone, but if I was on Windows Phone, I may change because my frame rate is a little slower on Windows Phone, not much, but a little slower. So I might change some code there. But other than those minor things, the entire code base that I'm using for this is the exact same across these platforms. So if Windows Phone is the one that I want to choose, that's the only one that I actually need to watch out for the frame rate. The rest of them, you'll see I have Mono Mac, Linux. All the code for every last one of those is exactly the same. What is really cool about Monogame is people are now building on top of it the other frameworks. So if any of you guys are really serious about Cocoa, are you guys like big Cocoa heads, anyone? Well, if you were.
What kind of heads?
Cocoa, come on, man.
All right.
Game speak. I need you to come with me with this.
All right, I'm coming with you. All right.
Physics, you do have to kind of like physics. But, you know, Cocoa 2D, it makes it kind of easy to get a game pumped out in doing that. Mm-hmm. What's cool is that Xamarin has actually taken that very popular framework and ported it for C#, so it's called Cocoa DXNA, and it runs on top of Monogame. So if you're really have some Cocoa 2D games that you build and they run on iOS and Android already, you already now can bring them into the Microsoft platform or the Linux platform, the Raspberry Pi platform, because it's built on Monogame.
Well, that's cool, and I think we got to give her a big round of applause, huh, today? Thank you very much. That is awesome. Wasn't that awesome? What a show. Well, there's lots more to come, so stay connected.